Good day, everyone. So this is a recorded video of our continuation of the discussion on sentence. So last meeting we mentioned of the different parts of the sentence as well as the different types of sentences. So we discussed that there are four types of sentences according to their structure. So we have simple sentence, which is composed of one independent clause. Then we have the compound sentence, which is composed of two independent clauses joined by the different coordinators, such as for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. And we also have the complex sentence, which is composed of one independent clause and one dependent clause. So if the compound sentence is joined by the different coordinators, complex sentence is composed of the different kinds of subordinators and relative pronouns. So among these subordinators are because, after, before, since. So these are commonly used subordinators, and we also have some relative pronouns such as which, who, where, when, and also we have while. So these are the that, of course. So these are the different subordinators and relative pronouns that are used to connect the independent clause and dependent clause. And finally, we have the combination of compound complex, which is composed of two or more independent clauses and one subordinator. Okay, so since we are all particular with the different types of sentences according to their structure, we'll be going deep. We'll be digging into a more detailed structure of the sentence following the sentence pattern. So for this afternoon, what we'll be discussing is about sentence pattern. So last meeting, I also mentioned of the different types of sentences. So we have the subject, and we also classify transitive verb from intransitive verb. We also mentioned of the different um, sense verbs, which function as linking verbs. So we mentioned all those things. So we will be utilizing those different parts of the sentences in order for us to be particular with the different structure of sentence according to a sentence pattern. So I'm pretty sure that all of you here are all particular with the different sentence patterns because it has been discussed several times when you were in elementary and when you were in high school, junior high school, and senior high school. But this is more of only just digging into details, um, making you more aware of all these things. Okay, since some of you have already forgotten. So let me share to you my screen. Okay, so although last meeting you have already rearranged these words, so let's not just use this again. So the dog man the beat, and based on what your classmates shared last meeting, so we can form two different sentences here. The dog beat the man, and the man beat the dog. So these are the two sentences which can be formed. Okay, so if we're just going to look at it, so there are parts of the sentence that are very apparent on the sentence. So we have the dog, which is the subject of the sentence, and then we have beat, which is the verb, and then we have the man, which receives the action. Okay, so all these things will be mentioned as we go through with our lecture. Sentences can be arranged into different ways. So we have the normal word order, and then we have the inverted word order. So let's enumerate the different ways of arranging sentences based on normal word order and inverted word order. So for the normal word order, so these are the following patterns. STVDO, again, When we talk of S, we're referring to subject. When we talk of TV, that is transitive verb. And D, direct object. IO, indirect object. A is adjective and C is complement. LV is a linking verb. So all these things, for sure you are all aware of this because we mentioned them last meeting. Okay, so let's have the first structure or the first pattern. So this first pattern is composed of subject, transitive verb, and direct object. So it has a sentence with transitive verb. Again, when we talk of transitive verb, it is a verb that takes an object. In Tagalog, tagatanggap ng kilos. Okay? So, for example, Ben loves Nana. Okay? Our subject here is Ben. Our transitive verb is loves. And Nana is our direct object. It means to say that the action loves has a receiver, which is Nana. Okay? Then next one is I like him. I, which is our subject, like, which is our transitive verb, and him, which is our direct object. So as you notice, the action like has a receiver of the action, which is him. Now, we have here a different structure of a word. So as you notice, in our sentence, we should read books. We use here a transitive verb, should read again, although we make use of the auxiliary should here. The function of the verb phrase should read is still transitive verb. Why? Because it has a receiver of the action, which is books. In our second sentence, we also use the auxiliary must. Hence, our verb phrase here is must follow. Still, even though it is in a form of a verb phrase, must follow, using an auxiliary verb must, still the function of the verb is transitive verb because it has the receiver of the action, which is traffic rule. So basically, by merely looking at the sentences, so although they are composed of three sets of part or three parts, the subject, the transitive verb, and direct object, there's still a need for you to test whether a verb is transitive or not. Again, just like what I mentioned last meeting, you can formulate a question. Let's say, Ben loves who? I like who? We should read what? People must follow what? So, direct object is always answerable by the question who and what. Okay? This time we will have another set of combination. So it's a combination of transitive verb and an adverbial. So we attach here an adverb in our sentence. Now, when we talk of an adverb, it means that it is a modifier that describes a verb, an adjective, and another adverb. So that is the function of the adverb. Again, it describes a verb, an adjective, and another adverb. Okay, so let us have the following examples. Mr. Vera teaches accounting every day. So our subject here is Mr. Vera. The transitive verb here is teaches, and the direct object is accounting, and our adverbial here is every day. Now, let's analyze this sentence. So we can formulate the question using our transitive verb. Mr. Vera teaches what? Accounting. So that means accounting is a direct object. Now, what makes this word an adverbial? Because it answers the questions. How often Mr. Vera teaches accounting? How often? That means we are describing the frequency in which the action teaches took place. Again, we are describing the action, how often the said action took place, okay, or takes place. Okay, so in our example here, we describe that every day Mr. Vera is teaching accounting. Every day Mr. Vera is teaching accounting. So that means every day is an adverbial because it is describing again how often the said action, which is stitches, was performed or is performed. Now let's have another example. I like him very much. Okay, I, which is the subject, like, which is the transitive verb, and him being the direct object, and very much is our adverbial. Now, let's focus on very much. So it is describing the extent in which the subject I like the direct object, which is see him. Okay, so that means very much is describing the extent in which this action happens. The extent, ibig sabihin, yung kung gaano ka, ah, yung gaano yung degree ng kanyang pagkagusto sa taong iyon. Okay? So you are describing yung degree of how much the person like him. Okay? So that makes very much as an adverbial because it is describing the transitive verb like. Now, let's move on to our next sentence. He answers answers their questions well. So he is our subject, answers is our transitive verb, their questions is our direct object, and well is our adverbial. Now, what makes well as an adverbial? Because it is describing the verb answers. How does the how does he answer their questions? How? Well, the answer is well. He answers well the question, something like that. So from that tone of sentence, we say that well is describing the action answers. Okay, so if you're going to notice that most of the questions that I formulated to determine if a particular word is an adverbial, I keep on using the term, I keep on using the question how often, how much, up to what extent. Because an adverbial is describing when the action happens, where the action happens, how the action happens, up to what extent the action happens, the frequency the action happens, the degree in which the action happens. So take note of those things, and that will give you idea if a particular word is an adverbial or not. Besides looking at the pattern, you notice here that an adverbial is commonly placed after the direct object. Okay, so that is our second pattern. Now, let's level up the pattern. This time, we will be adding indirect object. So, we mentioned that an object is a receiver of the action, but it may directly or indirectly receive the action. And the purpose again of the indirect object is only just to add information to the sentence. Okay, but although it's only just an additional information to the sentence, it does not necessarily mean that it should be the limit. It does not necessarily mean that it should not be taken into account because again, it may be an indirect object, but still it makes sense in the sentence. It adds information to the sentence. Okay, so the next pattern is subject, transitive verb, indirect object, direct object, and adverbial. So it is a sentence with two objects which are indirect object and direct object. So this pattern, take note of this pattern that indirect object is always placed before the direct object. We don't have such thing as S+TV+DO+A. There's no such thing as that. So again, indirect object should always be placed before the direct object. So it has to be S+TV+IO+DO. Indirect object should be placed before the direct object. So we have here the three examples. So the first one is the mother gives the baby her milk every 3 hours. So the subject here is the mother. The transitive verb here is give. The uh, the indirect object is the baby, and the direct object is her milk, and the adverb here is every 3 hours. So let's analyze the sentence one by one. So again, in order for you to determine which one is direct object or indirect object, you can formulate a question. The what and the who. What and who. The mother gives what? The mother gives what? Her milk. And that indicates that the word before her milk is the indirect object. But do not settle on that because indirect object is answerable by the question for whom or to whom. Para kanino. For whom and to whom. Let's say the mother gives the milk for whom? For the baby. Okay? The mother gives her milk for whom? For the baby. Okay? Again, you can if you're just going to eliminate the word the baby, the mother gives her milk. Okay? So that gives us an idea na ganun ang indirect object. Now, the indirect object being followed before the direct object. So this is the baby gives you idea that it is the indirect object. Okay? So you can formulate a question in order for you to verify if that said word is indirect object or direct object. Again, direct object answerable by the question what and who. Indirect object is for whom. Now, let's test if this is really an adverbial. So, the mother gives the baby her milk every 3 hours. How often does the mother give her milk to the baby? Every 3 hours. Okay, so it answers the question, how often? Okay, just like what I mentioned a while ago, when we talk of adverbial, it answers the question again, when the action happens, where the action happens, how often did the action happen, the degree in which the action happens, the frequency in which the action happens. So tandaan nyo lang yon in order for you to test whether that is an adverbial or not. Okay? So next sentence we have the teacher asked the students thought-provoking questions every day. Okay, so the teacher asked what? The thought-provoking questions. For whom? To the students. Okay, when? Every day. Okay, adverb. Okay, so next, we wrote the company a letter of inquiry last month. We wrote what? A letter of inquiry. For whom? To the company. When? Last month. Okay, so that's how you formulate questions. And again, take note of the structure of this sentence. Subject, transitive verb, indirect object, direct object, and adverbial or adverb. Now, let's move on with the subject, intransitive verb, or subject intransitive verb plus adverb. So again, when we talk of intransitive verb, it is a verb which does not have a receiver of the action. Okay, but it can have a an adverb which will describe the action. Okay, he awakes. He awakes. So as simple as that. Okay, so awakes is an intransitive verb. Again, it is always intransitive verb. Hindi siya pwede maging transitive verb. He awakes what? He awakes who? Wala namang sumasagot sa dulo, di ba? So, he awakes. Okay, he jumps. He runs. He swims. He swims. Ayan. Okay, next. He sleeps soundly. He is our subject, sleeps, which is our verb, soundly, describing how he sleeps. If we're just going to test the sentence, we can formulate a question. How does he sleep? So we're describing the action sleep. He sleep, he sleeps soundly. So you're describing the action sleeps. Now, we flew to Europe. We flew where? To Europe. Okay, it answers the question where, just like what I mentioned, that the uh, that the verb or that the adverbial should always answer the question where, when, who, where, when, um, how. So these are the questions that are commonly answered by the adverbial if you're going to test a word, if it's really adverbial or not. Next, he ran away from home. He ran away where? Away from home. Okay, it answers the question where. It describes where the subject he ran away. Okay, so that is again SIV or SIVA pattern. Now we can proceed now on the next order of words. So we have the subject, linking verb, and complement. The complement might be an adjective or a noun. Okay, so a noun that functions as an adjective. Okay, noun phrase that function as an adjective that can happen. Just look at our first example. So it is a sentence with linking verb. Sorry, it should be linking verb or sense verbs. So we mentioned already last meeting what are the different sense verbs that although they are sense verbs, they function as linking verb because they connect idea to the next idea. Okay, or connect the idea, the subject to its adjective. Okay, so when we talk of linking verb, we have is, are, was, and were, and am. Okay, there's no need for us to discuss further the difference between is and are, was, and were, and am. Okay, so let's leave that in subject verb agreement. Okay, and our first example, Mr. Alice is my instructor. Mr. Alice is my instructor. So the subject is Mr. Alice, and our linking verb is. Our complement here is my instructor. So as you notice, my instructor is not an adjective. It is a noun. It's a noun phrase actually. It's a noun phrase that functions as an adjective because it is telling us about Mr. Ellis. So the idea here is connected by the linking verb is. Now uh, let's make use of a sense verb in our two remaining examples. He looks healthy. So healthy here is describing our subject he. Okay. So our sense verb here is looks. The reason it's a sense verb because looks has something to do with our sense of sight. So it is a sense of sight. Your answer sounds correct. Your answer sounds correct. Although metaphorically lang yung sound, but still mixes of a sense verb here. Okay, so correct here is describing the answer, which is correct. Okay, so SLVC. It's very easy for us to identify if it is SLVC or not, because if you're just going to look at the sentence and you see linking verb is, are, was, and were, then automatically you will say that that is a SLVC pattern. And if you're particular different sense verb, look, sound, seems, hears, tastes, touches, so that will give you a hint that the pattern is SLVC. Okay, next. Let's have the inverted word order. The reason why it's called inverted word order because in the usual sentence structure, we are always following the subject predicate structure. The beginning of the sentence is the subject and it is followed by a predicate. But this time we have the inverted word order. Okay, just it's similar with the sentence structure in Filipino. So in the Philippines, in Tagalog, we are always using the inverted word order. Halimbawa, nakita ko siya. Nakita ko siya. Nauna yung nakita, which is a verb. Ko siya, ko, which is subject. Siya, which is the object. So that is a very common example of a VSO pattern. So in the Philippines, we are always using the VSO pattern. Nakita ko siya. If you're just going to use a normal word order, siya ay nakita ko. Kumbaga in Tagalog, it is the karaniwan at di karaniwang ayos. Sa karaniwang ayos, siya ay nakita ko. Karaniwang ayos. Dahil nagsisimula ang pangungusap sa sa subject na siya. Okay? And sa di karaniwang ayos, nakita ko siya. Nagsisimula siya sa verb or pandiwa. So the same is true in English. We also have the normal word order and the inverted word order. It's just so happen that most of the sentences in English is presented in a form of a normal word order. So that's somehow the reason why there's when we are translating words from Tagalog to English, it should not be um, by words. It has to be translated according to a structure. Pag ginamit mo yung, tinranslate mo yung nakita ko siya, saw I him. So I him. So pag word for word ang translation mo, it doesn't make sense. So it violates the rule of grammar. It violates the structure of the sentence, di ba? Yung nakita ko siya, translate mo siya na I saw him. So you see, from in Tagalog, we use VSO. In English, we use the normal word order. Okay, so that's the essence of being aware of the sentence pattern, because if you follow the sentence translation word for word, it might it can actually violate the rules of the sentence. So these are the following VSO patterns. When the statement is introduced by there and here, so they are apparently VSO pattern. Okay, so here are the leaders in the ministry. Here are the leaders in the ministry. So here is uh, is a verb. Actually, it is not a verb, but the action or the sense that you would like to point out here is that here, parang you are trying to tell na nandito, wherein um, implicitly or explicitly speaking, uh, the context of the sentence is to tell us that o tingnan ito ang ating leaders. So that context of pointing out who the leaders are in the ministry is already assumed to be an action. Because you might argue na, sir, ang are po is linking verb. Yes, it's a linking verb, but the sense that it is trying to tell us is the action of the person who is telling this. That is the action that we are implying here. Here are, let's say for example, I am the speaker, and I tell, here are the leaders in the ministry. So yung pagbumestro ko na sinasabi ko as a speaker, nandito ang mga pinuno ng ministry. Nandito ang pinuno ng ministry. It's already suggesting an action. It is a suggestive action. Okay? Well, anyway, so for every statement that is introduced by there and here, that they indicate that it follows the inverted formula, inverted pattern, which is the VSO pattern verb. And the subject here is the leaders, the leaders, and the object here is the ministry, the ministry, in the ministry. Okay, here is the place. Here is the place. Okay, another one. When the statement begins with a negative object or an adverb with a negative suggestion, such as never, seldom, nowhere, at no time. Okay, So you can make use of this statement. Say, let's say, never have I seen such foolhardiness. But if you're just going to follow a normal word order, ang s- ang structure niyan ay I have never seen such foolhardiness. I have never seen such foolhardiness. So that is in a normal word order. But if you're going to make use of an inverted word order, you can make use of this statement para hindi boring yung statement mo na puro ka na lang lagi, let's say, I have seen, I have seen, I have seen, I have seen. So the essence of using this kind of structure is for somehow to give us a different flavor in our paragraph. Parang may ganun siyang function para hindi naman boring yung paragraph mo na puro ka na lang I sa una, di ba? So you can make use of never have I seen such foolhardiness. Another one is for the purpose of emphasis. So you're emphasizing the negative object or the negative adverb. You are giving emphasis on the negative suggestion. Okay? Yun ang focus mo. But those are the two reasons for using this kind of pattern. So, seldom did he come to visit here. Okay? He seldom come to visit here. But it's a normal word order. But if you're going to make use of inverted word order, you can make use of this statement. Seldom did he come to visit here. Nowhere could I find the reference book you signed. I could find nowhere the reference book you signed. Okay, so in normal word order. So again, it gives you a different pattern, a different flavor in your paragraph or in your sentence. Secondly, when you are focusing or giving emphasis on the negative object or an adverb with a negative suggestion. So those are the two reasons for using this kind of pattern. Another one, Um, when the statement begins with a restricting expression such as no sooner than, scarcely, hardly, when, rarely, only so. So again, you can make use of these statements and place them at the beginning part of your sentence. Let's say, for example, no sooner had their demands been granted than they asked another. Scarcely had we begun to study when the fire broke out. Okay, so when you notice or when you're using this restricting expressions, then you can place them at the beginning part of your sentence. Another. So you can use a tag statement beginning with neither nor or so if you are using a compound statement. Okay, so in our examples here, we're using a compound sentence. I can't dance. So that's the first clause. Neither can my husband. So the pattern that we're focusing here is on the second clause. Neither can my husband. Okay, so neither is placed at the beginning of the clause. Still a VSO pattern. Although if we're going to look at this pattern, so it follows the SIV pattern. It follows the SIV pattern plus the VSO pattern. Okay. So you might be saying, sir, is it possible that we can join two two patterns in a single sentence? Yes, it can happen if you are joining independent clauses, just like our example here. Okay, but if your focus is more of a simple sentence, then it will be easier for us to classify the patterns. Okay, so you can make use of those compound structure or compound sentences structure following two different patterns, just like in our example here. I can't dance, so we use two patterns. I can't dance follows the SIV pattern, SIV pattern, because I is your subject, can't dance is your intransitive verb because it does not have a receiver of the action, can't dance. Neither can my husband. Neither can my husband. Although you can see here that we don't have another complement in the sentence. Just another can my husband because the first statement has already giving us the idea yung can't dance is already referring to the second clause. Yung neither can my husband is already referring to can dance. Okay, you get the point. Okay, so to avoid redundancy. Kasi if you're just going to still reflect yung dance, go on sa second clause. Halimbawa, I can't dance, neither can my husband dance. So, ulitin natin, I can't dance, neither can my husband dance. Parang awkward na yung sentence. So, implied na yung idea that on the second clause, we are referring to dance pa rin. Okay? Next, in our second example, Maria isn't going to the party. Neither is her friend. Neither is her friend. So the same explanation with the first one. Again, Maria isn't going to the party follows the SIVC pattern. Isn't going, SLVC. It's an LVC kasi isn't going, is not going, SLV. Maria is not going to the party. Neither is her husband or friend. Okay. So the same is true with the third example. Now, um, when the statement begins with a non-front position adverb for emphasis, then you can also make use of this. Side by side in their graves lie the lovers. So that is a non-front position adverbial. Often has he proved his mettle in war. Okay, often. Okay, if you're going to use a quoted portion, automatically a direct course or direct quotation is a VSO pattern. Okay, I am coming, said he. Next year, said the teacher. Okay, so it's a VSO pattern. And then we also have the verb, object, adverb. So the verb, object, adverb is the subject of a request or command is the person or person's address. This kind of sentence is composed of the verb, the object, and the modifier. Yung VOA, madali lang siya ma-identify because VOA is always used sa mga commands. Yung nagbibigay ng mga commands or requests. So, VOA lagi ang pattern niya. For example, cook the rice well. So, inutusan mo siya na lutuin yung rice na tama. But since we're referring to the parts of the sentence or the pattern of the sentence, cook here is the verb, the rice here is the object, well is the adverb. Cook what? The rice. How? Well. Okay, so dinidescribe niya kung paano yung lulutuin yung cook. So the person here or the speaker here is invisible. Okay, so halimbawa kung yung speaker, cook the rice well. It is invisible in the sentence, but it is implied that someone is telling the action or the command to the other person who is the receiver or the listener of the statement. So cook the rice well. So assume that I'm talking to you. Cook the rice well. I'm the speaker and you as a listener is the receiver of the statement. So I am commanding you to cook the rice well. So if it's a command, obviously it is a VOA or verb, object, adverb. Okay? So eat your food slowly. Again, the subject is not reflected, but we have here a speaker who is telling the listener to eat the food slowly. Again, it is the verb. Your food is the object. Eat what? Your food. How? Slowly. And come to school on time. Come is the verb. Uh, come where? To school when? On time. Okay, it's a VOA. Okay, so let's try this. So let us just try if you learn from our lesson and get a piece of paper and try answering the following items. So you can try it. Okay, so again, do not fool yourself. So direction, arrange the following, then identify the pattern used. Okay, so these are the different sentences. So interesting is there in the newspaper anything today? So you just have to arrange the following. So I'm giving you ample time to try the following sentences. Second one, we have solve you math this morning problems. Third is your lesson well, very steady. Fourth is a judge the case impartially should try. My father carefully the matter will weigh. Go every day I to school. Seventh, hardly the the Chinese English words can pronounce. Number eight, we have bought Maria book the from him. The ninth, we have you, the teacher, have met. Rarely go we to the movies nowadays. Okay, so let me see. Are you answering the questions? Okay, so I'm giving you ample time to answer. So again, while you are answering the questions, um, the purpose of being particular with the sentence pattern is for us to be aware of how to arrange the different words in a sentence. If you're aware that an IO should be placed before the the object or the direct object, then it will give you idea kung how am I going to arrange the words. Okay? Because again, if you are not particular with arranging the words, that might lead you to grammar faults or that might lead you to violating the rules of grammar. Okay? So let me see if you get the correct answers. So these are the key to corrections. So interesting is there in the newspaper anything today? So the possible answer will be there is anything interesting in the newspaper today. There is. So that already gives you an idea that we are following the inverted pattern, which is the VSO. Just like what we mentioned a while ago, that there and here, if the sentence begin with there and here, so it follows the VSO pattern. Secondly, you solved math problems this morning. You, which is our subject, solved what math problems this morning when this morning that is your adverb. So the answer is subject, transitive verb, direct object, and adverb. Okay, so how are you getting the answers correctly? Then third, your lesson well, very study. Study your lesson very well. Study. So we begin with the verb. Your lesson, which is your object, and very well, which is an adverb. Study what? Your lesson. How? Very well. So it is a VOA pattern. Verb, object, adverbial. Fourth, a judge should try the case impartially. A judge should try the case impartially. A judge is your subject. Should try is your transitive verb, and the case is your direct object. Impartially is your adverb. Why? Because a judge should try what? The case. It answers the questions what. It gives it as the idea or affirmation that the case is a direct object. Hence, the sentence pattern is subject, transitive verb, direct object plus the adverb. Number five, we have my father will weigh the matter carefully. Our subject here is my father. My father will weigh what? The matter. Hence, it answers the questions what will weigh is our transitive verb in a form of auxiliary. We use an auxiliary verb will. The matter, which answers the question will weigh what? The matter. Then that is a direct object. How? The father will weigh the matter carefully. Answers the question how. Therefore, carefully is an adverb. So the pattern is subject, transitive verb, direct object plus adverb. Or You can also consider this. Uh, my father will carefully weigh the matter. Will carefully weigh the matter, and that makes it as transitive verb direct object. Okay, you can consider that one. Then I go to school every day. I subject go where? Where? Go where? To school. How often? Every day. So it does not answer the question what and who. That means it is an intransitive verb plus adverb. Go where? To school. Diba? Sabi natin that intransitive verb answers the question when, where, how. Okay? So I go to school every day. Every day. How often you go to school? It's an adverb because it answers the question how often that the subject I go to school. Next, the Chinese can hardly pronounce English words. So it is STVDO kasi we put the adverb hardly in between the auxiliary can and the main verb pronounce. So that makes it STVDO. You can also consider this one. Hardly the Chinese can pronounce English words. So we place hardly at the beginning of the sentence. Hardly the Chinese can pronounce the English words. So it makes VSO pattern. Number 8, Maria bought the book from him. It is STVDOIO. Maria is the subject. Bought, Maria bought what? The book, which is direct object. Uh, where? From him. Okay, bought where? From him. So that is an adverb. Next, you have met the teacher or the teacher have met you. You have met the teacher or the teacher have met you. It's still STVDO. You is the subject, have met who? The teacher. The teacher is the subject. The teacher have met who? You. Okay, STVDO pattern. Okay, we rarely go to the movies nowadays. We go rarely to the movies nowadays. It's an SIV. Whichever you choose is still an SIVA. So those are the different patterns that you have to follow when you are now writing your sentences. Okay, or rarely we go to the movies nowadays, and that makes it a VSO pattern. Okay, so there are different ways to arrange your sentences, and that depends on your taste, provided that you follow the correct patterns, following the normal word order and the inverted word order. Okay, so how many items you got correctly? And you filled in again your bean with Sir Batch Learning B. And thank you very much for listening.